Over the last 6 years, America's allies, and in particular European allies, have bought a lot of fifth-generation F-35 Lightning II fighters from the US. Some estimates put the total value to the US economy at over $1 trillion, and the F-35 program boosts the economy of the US by at least $72 billion in tax revenue from the 254,000 jobs alone. With the US president alienating his closest allies nearly every day, a significant concern is emerging among F-35 operators worldwide. Could this expensive jet become entirely ineffective if one of Trump's unpredictable foreign policy picks, or Trump himself, decides to disable the advanced systems that are directly connected to Lockheed Martin's servers in the US? I'm Tuomas, a former officer in the Finnish Defence Forces, and today we'll look at why many European and Pacific allies of the US are seriously considering what to do about their extremely expensive fifth-generation fighters and other technologically advanced military gear, now that they've got a US president who seems to want to hand the technology of the F-35 over to India, which indirectly means that it'll end up in Russia and China within weeks of arrival, and the fact that Trump's ever more erratic behavior over Ukraine puts the rest of the free world in a bad diplomatic spot. The F-35 program, originally known as the Joint Strike Fighter program, began in the 1990s with the goal of developing a versatile stealthy fighter to replace multiple aging aircraft in NATO. In 2001, Lockheed Martin's X-35 design was selected over competitors, leading to the development of the F-35 with 3 main variants: the conventional takeoff A variant, the short takeoff vertical landing B variant, and the carrier-based C variant. Since 2019, several other nations joined the program, and it is estimated that Europe alone added roughly $60 billion in sales to the program and, by effect, the US economy. The UK has spent around 18 billion euros, Norway and Netherlands around 8 billion, Denmark and Belgium around 4 billion, Greece around 3 billion, Finland and Italy around 10 billion, Poland and Switzerland around 5 billion, and Romania recently placed the last European order, totaling around 7 billion. As we discussed in our previous video on how it would be detrimental to the US economy to lose Europe as an arms market, which I'll leave in the description, states like Texas and Florida earn somewhere along the line of $40 billion between them per year on this program from these sales alone, and that is before you count in parts and support. From the earlier hearings in the United States Congress, one of the biggest issues with the F-35 program is the enormous cost of maintaining the actual planes. With a measly operational rate of only around 30%, the F-35 costs a staggering 40,000 euros per flight hour to maintain, mainly due to the stealth coding and issues with software and reliability. The bipartisan hearings in the US Congress estimates that it'll cost the US a staggering $1.5 trillion to maintain the US F-35 fleet through their lifetime. To put things into perspective, that is a tenfold increase of the cost of the US F-16 and the F-18 programs combined over their entire 50-year service life. 2 non-US operators of the F-35, Great Britain and Israel, have been granted permission to alter the aircraft's onboard programming, essentially removing the original avionics and replacing them with their own systems. You may wonder why these changes were made. While Britain leveraged its advanced BAE systems to implement partial modifications, Israel went a step further, essentially gutting its F-35s and inserting entirely new electronics. The unsettling part of this development lies in the reason behind these drastic modifications, which poses a serious security concern for other F-35 customers. The F-35 is renowned for its cutting-edge sensors and avionics, but it is exactly this strength that has now become a substantial risk in terms of security. The big issue for everyone who's not Israel and the United Kingdom is that there's a constant link from the avionics of the F-35 straight to the US, and as we've seen in Ukraine, the US has very clearly defined boundaries as to when they like their weapons being used. If my home country Finland was ever invaded by Russia, would Putin-friendly Donald Trump allow us to use our new jets to hit targets within Russia? The mere fact that I have to ask myself this puts the entire purchase of the F-35 in a different light. So, What can Europe and America's allies do about this? First, I think that whoever's not received their jets in full, like Finland, Switzerland, Britain, Norway, Greece, Canada, and so on, will need to have some tough conversations with Lockheed Martin. Deliveries need to be paused or alternatively terminated until the Trump admin stops acting like Europe's enemy. In a hyper-capitalistic society like the US, purchasing power matters a great deal. As far as I gather from my Air Force friends, the terms and conditions of the acquisitions in the contracts stipulate a certain amount of operational levels, and going by statements in US Congress, the F-35 is hardly capable of a 30% operational rate. This clause could be used as leverage in order to stop or pause delivery as a soft power tool. Lockheed's big centers of production in the US are based mainly in Republican states, and the purchasing power of Europe could essentially cause recession in Trump heartland. These orders could be used to put pressure on Trump's base. In an economy where manufacturing jobs are few to begin with, losing another 200,000 jobs would not go down well. It is not like Europe lacks native options for their fighter fleets. While the F-35 is still likely the most capable jet around when it is airborne, the vast costs of maintaining it and the advancement of radar in its competitors is quickly becoming a reality that many operators will need to take into account. Costs-wise, it isn't even a competition. Estimates from the Netherlands, the US, and Norway range from 35 to 45,000 per flight hour for the F-35, which essentially means that only after 1,000 flight hours across, in example Norway's 52 F-35s, Norway could have a brand new SAMP-T system, complete with interceptors instead. I'm not a bureaucrat, but is a stealth fighter with this sort of cost the right choice when you look at it like this? The Rafale is around 10 to 15,000 per flight hour, while the Gripen is as little as 4,000 per flight hour. The Eurofighter ranges from 8 to 10,000, and in this regard the jobs for parts and maintenance would stay in Europe rather than Texas, Florida, or wherever Lockheed produces them. Another significant challenge for the F-35 lies in the software upgrades, which are essential for maintaining the aircraft's cutting-edge capabilities. Much like a Tesla, these upgrades are delivered remotely via computer link directly from the United States, ensuring that each aircraft remains aligned with the latest advancements in security features and systems performance. However, without these regular updates, operators risk falling behind, potentially missing out on critical security improvements, mission capabilities, and essential enhancements that keep the fleet competitive and safe from evolving threats. This dependence on software updates highlights both the advanced nature of the F-35 and the potential vulnerabilities that come with such a heavily networked system. Countries like Belgium, Finland, Denmark, Poland, Italy, United Kingdom, Greece, Romania, Switzerland, and the Czech Republic are yet to receive large parts or all of their orders, and the way things are going between Trump and Europe, I'm not so sure if all of these orders will see delivery, at least not in the current political climate. One thing that could be done would be for Europe to demand the same treatment of their F-35s as Lockheed Martin has done with Israel and partially Great Britain. We could demand that electronics are 100% European controlled and made. BAE, Saab, Dassault, and Airbus has the capability to do this, and with adequate pressure, I'm sure they could do exactly what Israel has done with their systems. But it remains to be seen whether Europe has the political will to enter into this kind of hardball negotiation. Switzerland have managed to wrangle a deal which lets them produce 4 out of their 36 jets entirely on their own. Maybe this kind of treatment also need to be considered for Europe as a whole. The present and future operators in Europe and Canada need to put these acquisitions at the top of the agenda every time they speak to anyone from the US government. Why would Canada, in example, buy fighter jets from a country whose administration openly threatens it with annexation, as recently as yesterday? In my opinion, seeing what was done to the brilliant Canadian aerospace industry in exchange for so-called trade with the US is nothing short of sad for Canada. In my very humble opinion, many European countries don't really need the F-35. What's truly essential is a fleet that can outperform Russia's top aircraft. If you look at Russia's Air Force performance in Ukraine, where even in the early stages they struggled to secure air dominance against a small yet capable force of Soviet-era aircraft, it becomes clear that fighters like the Gripen, Eurofighter, and Rafale offer sufficient deterrence. These aircraft can effectively counter Russian threats until Europe's sixth-generation fighters come into play within 10 years. The stink coming from anything American-made with Trump behaving the way he is cannot be underestimated. I know I promised you guys the naval episode of European capability this week, but I'm afraid that it'll have to wait another week, as I thought this development on the F-35 was more important. There'll be plenty of seamen in the next video, I promise. Until then, have a wonderful weekend, folks, and a congratulations to Canada for beating the US in hockey. We were all cheering for you.